Hello, welcome back to Orchard Forex. Today, something I haven't done for quite some time. I'm writing an expert advisor to wrap around an indicator that you can download from the MQL market. I'm actually writing this for two different indicators, so I'll be writing two expert advisors. I've chosen two indicators. There is the trend catcher indicator, which you can see on screen here at the moment. It's a free indicator and it offers buy and sell signals and a stop loss price with those signals. The other indicator is a paid indicator, Quantum Trend Sniper. It also has buy and sell signals, but it provides take profit numbers rather than stop loss. So there'll be a little bit of a difference between the two expert advisors and a couple of other nuances that you'll see as we go through. But I wanted to write these two. The expert advisors are not going to be terribly complicated, and I will leave a link where you can find the code for these expert advisors that I write. But you will then need these two indicators to make those expert advisors run. And as I say, this Quantum Trend Sniper is a paid indicator, and I wanted to do a comparison between a paid and a free indicator because there are a lot of very good free indicators out there. Now, before I get too far into this, I just want to mention I haven't been putting out a lot of content lately. I have been busy with a number of other things. One of those things has been some work I've been doing with a client that I've had for a long time. They've been very generous in supporting my channel, and so I just want to mention something that they've done recently. It's in a kind of pre-release mode at the moment, but they've released this website, orchardtradingacademy.com. Two things to say about that. Although the name is similar, it is not part of Orchard Forex. They just liked the name, and because we've got an association, they have renamed their site as orchardtradingacademy.com. Second, I've said many times, I don't make recommendations and I don't give advice on this channel. All I'm doing at the moment is making you aware of this product that they're offering, and it's a funded trading type account. And I guess third of the two things, yes, I will receive a small rebate if you sign up to this and use their product. I get a fraction of something or other. But I'm not trying to encourage you in any way. I'm just making you aware of this product. It is, as I said, a funded account. They have plans to grow this into more of a community trading system and to perhaps offer copy trading among members and among their house accounts as well. If you go to this page, orchardtradingacademy.com, and there will be a link in the description where you can find this. They've got information here on the funding plans that they offer. You can sign up here, open an account with a broker, and there are no challenges or tests or fees to enter. You simply deposit money, they top it up with extra money, and then you're off and trading. So as I said, not a recommendation, anything like that, just making you aware, but these people have been quite generous to my channel in the past, and so I wanted to do that. All right, now we can get on and look at the indicators that we have today. So before I actually just go ahead and write the expert advisor, I'll explain that I'm going to use a very, very simple strategy around these indicators. They both provide entry signals. One provides a stop loss number, the other provides a take profit number. My strategy is simply that when there is a signal to enter, I will enter at the market price, and I'll enter on the candle or on the opening of the candle after that signal occurs. I will enter with a take profit and a stop loss, so I'll have to calculate the take profit from the free indicator which provides a stop loss, and I'll have to calculate the stop loss from the paid indicator which provides the take profit. I'll exit trades then when either the deal hits the take profit or stop loss, obviously, but also if I get a signal in the opposite direction. Now, at least one of these indicators can provide multiple signals in the same direction, so I might have more than one trade open in one direction at a time. But as soon as I get a signal in the opposite direction, I'll close everything and start again. So a very simple strategy. It may not be the best strategy for both of these, may not even be the best strategy for either of these, but at least it's comparable between the two. And although I'm doing a comparison between these two indicators, I'm not necessarily saying that one is better than the other. I'm simply saying here they are. This is the result that I get with this very, very simple strategy. And you're free then to go ahead and make modifications to that strategy and use these indicators in any way that you like. So now let's get into the code. I'm going to begin with the trend catcher, the free indicator, write the code for that because it's a little bit easier than the code for the Quantum Trend Sniper. So we'll actually go to MetaTrader 5 first, and look at these two indicators and get a little bit of information about them. I have MetaTrader 5 open here, and I've already downloaded both of the indicators from the market, and MetaTrader 5 has placed them in this market folder, Indicators Market, Quantum Trend Sniper, and the Trend Catcher with Alert. The Trend Catcher with Alert, that's a free indicator. I'm just going to drag that onto the chart, and you can see the inputs here. The inputs are important because I'm going to need to capture these inputs on the Expert Advisor and pass them to the custom indicator when I open it inside the code. When you create a custom indicator or access the custom indicator function inside MQL, the arguments that you pass to that indicator are in the same order that they appear here on this input screen. And if you don't include all of the values, then any of the values past the last one that you provide just take the default value from the indicator. Now that's important here because this first value on the inputs just is the title Trend Catcher. So I could change that, but it has nothing to do with the way the indicator actually works. But because it takes a position on the inputs, I actually have to have something that fills that in. I won't actually create an input in my code, but I'll have to make sure there's a value that I pass to the indicator in that position. The next one, this stop loss deviation, that's actually used in the calculations of the indicator, so I need to capture that as an input on the Expert. Everything after that is simply part of the display of the indicator. So I could simply leave all the rest of this blank and I would just get the defaults from those. But I have found that this one here, count bars to scan, it affects the look back that the indicator does. And having this set to a high value when the Expert is running slows the indicator down, or slows the Expert down. So I want to replace that 1000 with something much smaller. And that means that I have to also pass this to the indicator because it occupies a position. So I'll be passing in 4 values when I create the custom indicator. This is the only one that actually needs an input, but I'll also have an input for this. So you can set a smaller number to make the Expert run faster. So for the time being, I've just accepted all of those values. Here in the data window now, I can see that there are values for uptrend stop, downtrend stop, uptrend signal, down signal, and uptrend line and downtrend line. I don't need the uptrend line and downtrend line. They're there, but I don't need them. I do need the stops. So they will be the stop loss prices that are provided by the indicator, and the signals are the entry points provided by the indicator. Now I can see there's an entry point over here. If I just put the crosshairs on that. And then if you look at the data window, you can see that there's a value in the downtrend stop. So there's a stop loss value for the downtrend. And then there's the downtrend signal, which is the price that the indicator is coming up with for the entry. Now because I'm entering at market, I can't really choose a price. So I'm just going to go in at the market price. But what I'll be using that downtrend signal value for is simply to say, here is a signal, therefore it's a downtrend, therefore I'm selling. So in this case, I would enter at the market price on the bar immediately after this bar where the signal has occurred. And I'll be setting a stop loss at 1.15707. So I'll actually be entering at the beginning of this next bar, which you can see doesn't have a signal value there. So I'm always looking backwards by 1 to get the signal to enter these. And in this case, I would hang on to that until I either hit a take profit, and that will be at a ratio to the stop loss, or until I get an opposite signal. I'll also mention that if you look at the value of the downtrend stop here, it changes as I go to each candle. I'm going to pick that value up from this candle where the signal occurs, and I'm not going to be adjusting that as I go. So there might be an argument for changing this strategy to have that stop loss as more of a trailing stop. I'm just going to leave that as a fixed stop loss. And the final thing to note, the order that these values occur, because I'm looking at buffer numbers to get the values from the indicator, this uptrend stop would be buffer number 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. I don't need any past that, so 0, 1, 2, and 3 will be the buffer numbers that I get from this particular indicator. It is not always true that the first value that occurs here in the data window is buffer number 0 and so on. but in this case it is. And if I ever get to reviewing an indicator where that's not the case, I'll show you how you can determine those values. So we can now go straight into the code for this. When I've done that code, we'll come back and look at the Quantum Trend Sniper. So let's start with the Trend Catcher code. I've already created a folder here called Indicator Experts underneath my Orchard folder, and I've created the Trend Catcher EA. But so far all I have is the opening comment and the property statements. I'll include trade.mqh, and that gives me access to the C-Trade and the seed position info class, and I'll just create variables, trade and position info, and now some inputs. The input group, that's just a heading that appears on the input screen. Then I have this input indicator path. Because I'm loading a custom indicator, I need to know where to find that. It's been downloaded from the market, so it occurs inside market/trend catcher with alert mt5.ex5. If you move that to somewhere else, then you can change this. And then, as I said, I need a placeholder for things like the heading that was on the inputs for the indicator. I'm not making it an input here, I'm just making that a constant. But I'm still calling it INP. I'm using that naming convention, so it will look like an input. And then the one input that affects the operation of that indicator, the loss deviation, 0.25. And then another constant, which is just the placeholder for that heading, and then one more input for the bars to scan, which, as I said, will improve the performance if I use a small number. I'm leaving that at 10. I could probably turn it down to 1 if I wanted to, but I'll just leave it at 10 for now. Then I just have a small number of inputs that are actually related to the operation of the expert. So the take profit ratio, this indicator will give me a stop loss value, and then I'll simply multiply that by, in this case, 1 to get my take profit price. Default volume for each trade, a magic number, and then a comment. I have a small number of global variables that I'll be using. So there's a handle, that's the handle to the indicator. And then the up signal buffer and the down signal buffer. As I said, from looking at the data window, they are buffer number 2 and 3. And the stop loss buffers for up and down are 0 and 1. And the signal offset, the signal here, because I'm trading at the opening of a candle, I'm looking at the candle one before to know that a signal has occurred. So that signal offset is just 1. Now the first piece of real code, this is the onInit function. First thing I do is set the expert magic number for the trade object or the trade instance there, just with the input magic number. Then I'm getting the handle to the custom indicator. So I custom, and the first two arguments are the symbol and the period. I'm working from the chart symbol and period. The next argument for custom indicator is the path to the indicator. So that's the input that I have that shows where I can find it. And the rest of the inputs are the inputs that actually go directly to the indicator. So from top to bottom, if you remember the input screen, the indicator name, stop loss deviation, that empty placeholder heading, and the number of bars to scan. And I'm not putting in any more inputs than that. It will simply take the defaults for the indicator. Then I call isNewBar, which is one of my custom functions. I call that once to initialize it so that I don't trade on the bar where I start this expert running. And then I'm simply returning in succeeded. And the next is the onDinit. And because I'm using a handle to an indicator, I should release that handle with the indicator release handle function. And now the onTick function. I said I'm only going to trade on the start of a bar, so if this is not a new bar tick, then I just return, and it will just keep doing that until I get a tick where it is a new bar, and this is one of the functions I'll get to at the end, because I'm writing this code from top to bottom, and I'll fill in these functions as I go later. So after I've determined that this is a new bar, I'm simply going to grab the values of the indicator, or the values from the indicator. I'm getting the uptrend value and the downtrend value, and I have another custom function that we'll write again at the end, get buffer value. So all this will do is get the value from the up signal buffer offset by this signal offset. So we'll get the value of the up signal buffer from bar number 1 and put that in the uptrend value, and the same for the downtrend value using the down signal buffer. The code after that's pretty simple. If the uptrend value is not equal to 0 and it's not equal to empty value. So I don't know what's been used as the empty value in this particular indicator, so I'm just testing for 0 or empty value. If it's not 0 or empty value, then it must be an uptrend value. And I'm assuming that I can't get both up and down at the same time, but it really doesn't matter. So if I pass that test, there is an uptrend. The stop loss price then comes from the same get buffer value function, but this time with the up stop buffer. And then I simply close all of the sell positions. So I've got an up, so I'm buying now. I close all of the sell positions with this close positions function, and then I open a new position of type buy with that stop loss price. If I have a downtrend value, then it's just the opposite. Again, testing 0 on empty value, get the buffer value, this time with the down stop buffer, close the buy positions, and open a sell. And that's it for all the processing. So now I'll just fill in these functions that I have. And let's start with the isNewBar because I use that everywhere. I won't explain it too much. You should have seen it by now many times. So just copy that down if you need it. The getBufferValue function So to get the value from the custom indicator, I need an array of type double, and I'm calling that buffer here. I use the copy buffer statement, passing in the handle. That's a global variable, so I didn't need to pass it to this function. The buffer number, which was passed in. Signal offset, again, it's a global. I only want the value from one bar, so number of bars 1, and that result goes into buffer. So although this is an array, it will be an array with only one element in it after this call. And so I can then just return the value of buffer at index 0. And now close positions. Here I'm closing all positions of a given type. So it's my standard loop through positions for int I equals positions total minus 1, while I is greater than or equal to 0, I minus minus. Position info.select by index. So the position info or C position info class has this function called select by index. I just pass in I. If that fails, then I couldn't select a given position, so I can just continue and loop around to the next position number. If the symbol, positioninfo.symbol, is not equal to my current chart symbol, then it's from a different chart, so continue. If the magic number doesn't match the input magic, then it's from a different expert, so I continue. And if the type, position type, is not equal to this type that was passed into the function, then again continue. So if I get past all of those, then I have found a position that is for this symbol, this magic number, and the supplied type, so I can assume that it's for this expert advisor, and then I simply call trade.positionClose, passing in the ticket number. And so that will loop through and close all positions of this type that match the symbol and the magic number. And the last function should be the open position. So I'm using this MQL tick and then calling the function simple info tick, passing the chart symbol and that tick. That will populate this with values from the most recent tick, including the bid and the ask price, which is what I want. So the open price, because I'm opening at market, if this is a buy type, if it's a buy, then I'm going to be opening at the ask price, and if it's not a buy, then it's a sell, and I'll be opening at the bid price. The delta then, this is just the difference between the open price and the stop loss, so this tells me how far away from the open price is this supplied stop loss price. And then that should be double space. The take profit price is the open price plus that delta multiplied by the take profit ratio. My default input for that is a 1-to-1 ratio, so this will just be take profit price is open price plus the same as this delta. And I'll mention here, I'm not doing things to handle errors in this code. This is just enough to run through the strategy tester. You probably should include normalized double here, and you should be testing things like sufficient funds available, market open, and so on. But I'm not doing any of that because I'm just running this in the strategy tester. So then it's just trade position open, symbol, type, the volume from the inputs, the open price, stop loss, take profit price, and the comment, and the magic number will be filled in from the value we put into the trade object earlier. I think that will be everything. I should be able to compile. No errors, so that's ready to run through some tests. Now the Quantum Trend Sniper, this is a paid indicator, which means that it won't run directly on a live or a demo account chart, at least not because I haven't paid for it. I basically downloaded the demo version of this, but I can run it in the strategy tester. So by selecting indicator here, I can then select the Quantum Trend Sniper, and I can just run that. I don't really need to worry about too many of the other inputs. I just want to see how it works for the time being. Now that's run to completion, and I've just scrolled backwards here to a point where a signal was actually raised. So the first thing you can see, I can get multiple signals in the same direction without getting a reverse signal. So as I said with my strategy, I would actually be opening a trade here and a trade there. In the data window, there's a long signal and a short signal, and if I hold the crosshairs over it, you can see the long signal is just 1 and short signal is empty. So there's no values provided with the long and short signals for this indicator, just a 1 if there is a signal and an empty if there is no signal. This provides take profit levels and no stop loss value, and they don't appear in the data window. So just the signals here, the take profit levels are not there. So firstly, where with the other indicator I was able to get a stop loss and then I multiply that by a profit factor to set my take profit, with this I'm going to get a take profit value and I'll divide that by the take profit factor to get the stop loss value. I'm also going to have an input that will allow you to select which of these take profit 1, 2 or 3 you want to use. I'll default to take profit 2 in my tests, but there'll be an input where you can choose those. But you can also see that there's more than one take profit 3, take profit 2, take profit 1. In fact, there are a lot of them. They're all over the chart now because I've run this for a while. Because these aren't in the data window, I have to look at the objects on the chart to find the take profit lines. These are trend lines. And because there's more than one, I'm going to have to identify them in some way. So let's just take, for example, this signal. And I'm looking at this take profit 2. So if I look at the object list, there are a lot of trend lines on here, and I can see that the trend lines have a name, RSI, DIV, TP 1, 2, and 3, and then in this case a 2. If I find another one, 1, 2, and 3, suffix of 3. So it's that final number which is differentiating this take profit 1 from every other take profit 1. I don't know how many of those there might be, and I don't know, just from the alert that's been raised, I don't know which that I'm looking for. But if I look, for example, at this take profit 2, 3, I look at the properties of that, it has a date time here. And that date time, the from date time, matches the, close that, matches the date time of this candle. So to get those take profit values, I'm going to search for objects on the chart of type trend line with a name that begins with RSI, DIV 1, 2 or 3, depending which I'm looking at, and with a start time that matches the time of this candle. Also in testing, I found that that alert doesn't appear immediately on the close of this candle. It doesn't appear until 2 candles later. So with the trend catcher indicator, I was able to simply look 1 candle back. With this indicator, I'm having to look 2 candles back to find that that signal occurs. I think that's all there is in the investigation of this. So now we can go in and create the code for the Quantum Trend Sniper. So now looking at the code for the Quantum Trend Sniper EA, and all I've done so far, I've copied all of the code for the Trend Catcher EA because a lot of it's the same, and I'll just go through the differences. So obviously the heading comment's different, properties, nothing there. I'm still including trade.mqh. I did say that I would be having an input so you can choose whether you want to take profit at levels 1, 2 or 3, and to do that I'm going to create an enum. So it's pretty simple, take profit level 1, 2 or 3, and the values of those are 1, 2 and 3. And now I realize I forgot to actually show the inputs to this indicator. If we go back, Mark Trend Sniper inputs, there we go. The first input's a period, the applied price, that's a close price, then there's an overbought and an oversold value, and then there are some colors, the use take profit levels, and this is important, the values of those use take profit levels, because by changing those you adjust the ratio of how far apart these are. So this input's needed, this use take profit levels, I'll default that to true. These two are not needed for the expert advisor, but they do get in the way because they have to be here. And then obviously the first 3 arguments are needed, or first 4. So now I can replace these indicator settings from the earlier expert. So the indicator path, obviously that's changed to the Quantum Trend Sniper. The period, applied price 14 and close, overbought level at 70, oversold at 30. The bullish color at blue and the bearish color at red, but they are constants because I don't need them. I'm also setting this as a constant, the use take profit levels to true, and then the levels 1, 2 and 3, 20, 50 and 100. The expert settings themselves I can leave almost as they are, except that I want to have one more input to choose this take profit level. So I'm defaulting that to take profit level 1. Actually I'll default that to take profit level 2. I'm still having a handle because I still have a custom indicator, but I'll change all of these. There are only 2 buffers that I can use. That's the long buffer at 0 and the short buffer at 1, and the signal offset. This particular indicator doesn't show the buy or sell signal until 2 bars later than the other indicator. So I have to look back 3. This call to iCustom was for the other indicator, so I can remove that. And now more arguments, but that's because I had to fit this bullish and bearish color in, and then the 3 take profit levels. On DN it doesn't change, I've just got the handle still, so I need to release that. And in OnTick, I'm still only trading on a new bar. I'm still calling get buffer value for the long signal and the short signal, so I've got those in long value and short value. So obviously I've changed the names of these variables, and I'm not calculating stop loss price here because this indicator gives me the take profit values. I'm going to be calculating the take profits and the stop loss in the open position function for this particular expert. And on the sell side, short value, and remove that. So other than that, on tick is pretty much the same. It's the same structure. I get the values from the indicator, I run the test, close the opposite side, open the current trend. Also there is no stop loss price here, so I remove that. Here's new bar doesn't change. Get buffer value doesn't change. Remember this signal offset, it's a global variable, so now I'm looking at bar number 3 instead of bar number 1. But other than that, this function is the same as it was before. Close positions is also exactly the same. I pass in a type and then just close everything of that type. Now for open position, I'm still getting the most recent tick so that I can get the ask and the bid price because the open price is the same. But now I haven't been passed a stop loss price. I'll just remove that. I need to get the take profit price, and remember there is no buffer value for the take profit prices. I'm having to look at the chart and find them. So the take profit price will be another function that I have to add, get take profit price, and then the delta in this case is take profit price minus the open price. And then the stop loss price, as I mentioned, it's the open price minus delta divided by that take profit ratio. And in this case, I will add in the normalized double. And once I have that, the position open should be the same, symbol, type, volume, open price, stop loss, take profit. Yes, that's all the same. So that's the open position. I think the only thing that's missing now is this get take profit price function. So going through this bit by bit, remember I identified that all of the trend lines that were a take profit line began with RSI div TP. So prefix RSI div TP plus an integer to string of the take profit level that I'm using. I set the values of these. So level 1 is 1, level 2 is 2, level 3 is 3. So this will simply give me RSI div TP 2 if I'm using level 2. The bar time is just using iTime for the symbol and period for the signal offset, because I know that I'm looking at bar number 3, so I'll simply get the start time for bar number 3 coming from the signal offset, and then I need to work through the objects on the screen. So objects total, count equals objects total, stepping through them, I equals count minus 1, while I is greater than or equal to 0, I minus minus, and then I get the name of the object with object name, chart number 0, index I, chart number 0 being the current chart. If string find name, comma, prefix. So in the name of the object, if the prefix is found at position 0, then I know it begins with RSI div TP number. Then I get the object type. If the object get integer, chart number 0, name, obj prop type is equal to obj trend. So if it's a trend line, then this is the type of object I'm looking for. So now I've checked. The name begins with the right characters, because there are some labels that begin with the same prefix, but then they have something else at the end of the name. So has the right prefix, it's a trend line. I get the date and time of that object, because there can be many trend lines for level 2, and that's a date time object get integer name obj prop time, and I want the time element 0 because trend lines have a start and an end time. So I want the start time. And if that's equal to the bar time, so if this trend line begins on bar number 3, then this is what I'm looking for. The take profit price is the price property element 0. And I just return that take profit price. If I get through all of this and find nothing, then I'll just return 0. And I probably should have some code to handle that, but I'll leave that for later. I think that should be everything I need for this expert advisor. See if that compiles. It does. So now we can just run these two and see what we find. So I'll just run these so you can see some results, but remember, this is just a very simple strategy that I threw together to use the indicators that raise buy and sell signals. I had intended, because as I said, this strategy hasn't been manipulated to particularly fit the behavior of either of these indicators, so I had intended to run through the optimizer to get the best possible settings for each of the indicators. Now I know I've said in the past that's just curve fitting, but for all I know that's the right thing to do with each of these indicators. But when I tried to run the optimizer on the trend catcher, I found it ran fine through, I've got 12 cores on my computer, it ran through 12 cores in the first pass, then it ran the second pass because there were obviously more than 12 cases, and that second pass never finished. No matter what I did, I couldn't get it to run past a second pass. It ran fine with the Quantum Trend Sniper, but with the trend catcher in the optimizer, the expert would not go through that second pass, wouldn't even finish the second pass. So I could never get more than 12 results out at one time, and I just didn't want to take the time to run the whole thing in batches of no more than 12. So I'm going to just run these with basically default settings and leave it up to you if you want to try to change those settings and get a better result. From 1st of January 23 to 1st of January 25, this is the Quantum Trend Scalper. My inputs are a period of 14 using the close price, overbought and oversold at 70.30, take profit levels at 20, 50, 100, and I've chosen take profit level 2, take profit to stop loss ratio of 1, and then volume, magic, and comment. So that's the graph. Not a lot of trades. If I go to the backtest result here, only 59 trades over the 2 years. This is on a 1 hour chart. I suppose 59 good trades are better than 1,000 bad ones. Not a great profit either, $25. Remember though, this strategy is not necessarily the best strategy. It's just something that uses the particular indicator. Now let's try trend catcher. In this case, my inputs, I'm still using the default 0.25, 10 bars. There really is no other value to change on this, so that's the default. So 141 trades with this, so some more, but this has a loss of $39. But as I said, you can change the input to this, you can change the strategy. The kind of things I could suggest you would try with a strategy, you might want to, instead of just closing trades on the opposite indicator, you might want to only close the trades that are in profit, so keep the losers running for a while. You might want to remove the take profit and run with a trailing stop, that kind of thing. So a lot you can adjust with these, but I've basically shown you how to write the code for these two indicators. And I'll probably come back with more indicators that I download from the market and just turn those into expert advisors as well. I'm going to be uploading this code to my website. There will be a link where you can find it. So if you want to download the code, you can take that and then modify it yourself to suit your own strategy. If this has been useful, then remember, click the like button because that helps me to get more views. And If you want to see more of these videos, click subscribe and then click the bell icon and you'll be notified when I release the next video. So until the next time, thank you for watching.